Good day, folks. My name is Dustin Cormier. Welcome to my presentation on what are the Mahadashas. This is my presentation I'm going to be doing for my Year 4 thesis as a student of Asheville Vedic Astrology. I'm very excited to be teaching you about the Mahadashas today. In this video, I plan to explain what the Mahadashas are from a historical definition, as well as some other definitions of the Sanskrit term. And I'm also going to unfold a little bit of my own allegorical understanding of how to use the Mahadashas. And then in the latter part of the episode, we're going to explore together how to functionally use the Dashas based on the techniques and tools given in Asheville Vedic Astrology's school. The Mahadashas are a little-known technique in the Western astrology sphere, but they lie at the foundation of horoscope analysis to Jyotishis. Along with the transits, Gochara in Sanskrit, the Dashas make up the other half of what we would call predictive analysis, predicting time periods. This is a very important part of astrology because, after all, many clients don't necessarily just come to astrologers just looking for the astrologer to put their whole life perspective in one session. Many clients come to astrologers just to know enough about what's happening right now in order to get by. This is where Dashas and transits come in. And I think that this is a very important element of astrology, which most students don't think about. Most students just think that they're going to get out there into the world and that everybody just wants you to tell them their life story. It's not usually why people come to guidance counseling. Something to keep in mind. And this is why predictive periods and predictive analysis of the unfolding of our karma is very important. It's really what this episode and what the Mahadashas are all about. We all ought to know that you cannot read everything about a person from the natal chart alone. That only shows the natal chart from a fixed point in time. The natal Rashi chart is a key moment because it represents the seed from which our lives unfold, and it imparts information on our basic ego structure that sustains our entire energy field, for better or worse, throughout our lives. So whenever an important and impactful experience happens in our lives, it's usually because the dynamic energy of the moment has somehow affected that fixed ego structure. So when I say energy field, it's a word I use to describe the total cosmic picture of a person's physical, emotional, mental, romantic, and spiritual body. And this cosmic picture, the energy field, is influenced by a bombardment of things at every moment. This includes, but is not limited to, the moon's daily nakshatra, the new moon sign of the month, the progressions of planets in their eclipse cycles. There's a year, month, week, and day ruler. There's the planetary maturity and graha ages, which is technically a dasha that we're going to talk about. And then there's, of course, transits and dashas. The two main styles of predictive analysis in Vedic astrology are the dashas and the transits. Transits are better known as Gochara in ancient Jyotish and ancient Vedic astrology. Now, the emphasis here is that as astrologers, it's important for us to have as many tools as we can to help us understand and even alter our message of the client's divine essence in a way which makes our message useful to them and graspable to them. Give it to them in a way that they can immediately grasp in their experience in a functional and practical way. So here's a common and understandable question. What exactly is a dasha? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about it. As some of you know, as a fourth-year student, I've been doing a little bit of clients myself already. And I've kind of been working out, I'm always trying to work out allegories and sort of ways of getting my clients to understand what the heck it is that I'm talking about. The Dashas, it's very useful for you to put it in a framework so that your clients can understand phenomenologically, like theosophically, what's going on. And this is what this next part of this dialogue is all about. I've got this picture that I actually got from Vic Takara. He's another YouTuber online. And he gave me this idea of a clock. It's an eternal and internal clock that's always unfolding for us. When you see the surface of the clock, you see, oh, it's 5 o'clock. You know, everyone's doing the 5 o'clock thing. Everyone's coming home from work. And it's like clockwork. Everybody knows when it's 5 o'clock that it's time to put away most of the job that most people are doing and go home. But when we see that it's 5 o'clock, the hand being at 5 o'clock got there because all the little gears inside the clock had been turning and turning and turning, and all the things have been warping around so that the minute hand could go all the way around. Just like how before 5 o'clock you have 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock comes, right? So when we see the face of the clock, what we're actually seeing is the result of the time that's come before it. Of course. Now, these dasha periods, they have a continuity as well. Our souls are going through internal experiences where we emphasize one of the 9 planets, one of the 9 ancient correlated planets. That's, of course, the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Now, this is kind of an image that I've been trying to throw at people. Is this almost like this idea? We're going to use another clock metaphor because that's a common one to use for a lot of things in astrology, of course. The clock relates to time. Now, let's say that I go to work all day. I go to work at 9 a.m. I get off work at 5 p.m. and I go to have my favorite coffee of the day. My favorite coffee of the day is at 5 o'clock p.m. This is a coffee, I actually pretty much do this. It's kind of like my wind down coffee, even though it's something to perk me up, and it's something I love doing. And every time it's 5 p.m. every day after work, I sniff that coffee and I go, that's so enjoyable. And I can't wait to have this experience every day. You know, now, as after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock comes, 7 o'clock, 8 p.m., I start to get wind down. 9 or 10, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend, and I'm getting tired, and I want to go to bed. And then I wake up the next day, 8 a.m., go back to work. By the time 2 p.m. comes, I'm in the middle of work, I'm pushing through, and I'm going through all these other time slots, and I just can't wait to get back to that 5 p.m. coffee, my favorite moment of the day, where I can finally let go of everything and enjoy this experience that I've been having, that I want to have. So, that 5 o'clock coffee, what it really is it's kind of like it's kind of like having one of these Mahadasha experiences, where we experience the Mahadashas like this 5 p.m. coffee, in the sense that I'm excited to experience that 5 p.m. coffee. Right after I have the coffee, I've had that experience. It's like I don't need another coffee for the rest of the night. But then I get up the next day, and I haven't had that 5 p.m. coffee that I love so much. It's not just the coffee, it's the rest moment. It's 5 p.m. That's what I love having so much. So before 5 p.m., I'm really excited to have this experience. Now, the point is that every Mahadasha that we have, whether we understand this or not, is something that we need to have, something that the soul is yearning to kind of get through. an experience, because we have not had it in 120 Earth years. That's kind of the cosmic thing going on here. Like if 120 years could be translated to that 24 hours where I'm running around and I can't wait to have that 5 p.m. coffee again, in the same way, each Mahadasha is like that. And we need to experience them. The reason that the Dasha period is so emphasized is because we haven't had the lessons related to that planet grinded into us in 120 cosmic Earth years, according to like the theory of reincarnation. Now, it's hard to say theosophically, again, whether that is exactly the case, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but this is the point, is that we need each Mahadasha. It's like we've been desiring for it. We need a hit of it, whatever that planet is. If you're experiencing the Venus Mahadasha at 20 years old, it's because in your previous incarnations, you've been pushing to have this experience of Venus at 20 years old. And even if it's a hard experience, even if it's a tough experience, even if it's a planet that's debilitated in the Shastyamsha and the D1, it's got lots of ill aspects, it's got lots of Lajatati of Ashtas, we still, the detriments and the pains associated with that planet, if we can have a consolidating lesson about that planet and experience it to its fullest, then we can have the self-realization of what that planet is, what it means as a weak link in our energy field. And this is why the universe conspires to put us through these things, through these lessons. It's just like the transits, and it's just like anything that's involved in our soul evolution. Basically predicated on the idea that our soul is looking to realize, to eat, to be the fullness of our illumined light of our Atma. But it can only be it in bites, as we know. And these are the bites that our experience unfolds through according to Jyotish and Parashara, Horashastra astrology. So even if an experience is a tough one, even when we experience Saturn Mahadasha, mind you, like we're going to find out for this example chart that we see at the end of this, that, Saturn can be a tough, malefic planet, but even a planet like Saturn, if well placed and if it's rightly positioned in the chart, can bring great fruits during its dasha, usually through suffering and much effort, but it can bring the greatest satisfaction, more than any planet, really. But this just goes to show that we ought to be careful how we ought to define the pains of a Mahadasha, because the pain of Saturn might be actually you. If you have a well-placed Saturn, the pains of Saturn can be bringing you to the heights of what you really need to unfold the greatest accomplishment your soul is capable of. And conversely, if we're having like a Venus dasha, which is supposed to be so nice, Venus is all about enjoying the luxury and pleasure of the benefic Venus, and we will enjoy it. You'll typically enjoy Venus, but any pains there, any experience of not getting what it is that you sought, in the same way, we need to have that experience. Just like we've been craving that coffee at 5 p.m. Even if it's something that's painful that we need to get through, the universe is doing it for us, whether we like it or not. And we should like it because it's nature. And it's a good thing to get in tune with, because we are that. Now, what exactly does all of this mean? I'm trying to paint a picture of the theosophy of the soul going on here. And so I've almost tried to take, to talk a little bit about it, we could delve into a little bit of a speculative, almost like a religiosity, in terms of like what we might mean by reincarnation, the reincarnating soul. You know, a person's born in Earth's star system in the Milky Way during the Mercury Mahadasha, for example. Let's say they die during the Rahu Mahadasha, right? And then somewhere else, we get sucked into the Atma generator, born in some other planet in the Pleiades. And it could be possible, maybe we'd be born in the Rahu Mahadasha because we died in the Rahu Mahadasha in our previous incarnation. Then we're born in Rahu Dasha in a planet somewhere in the Pleiades, and we die during Venus Mahadasha, let's say. Then we're born somewhere else. Let's say we're back on Earth or the star in Sirius or something like that. And maybe we're born in the Venus Mahadasha because we died in the Venus Mahadasha in the last incarnation. And this is essentially what this is saying too. So whether this is the case, it's hard to say, but I actually don't think so. What I think is that Vimshotri and the planets are naturally in tune to the code of what our soul needs. So we don't necessarily need to grip too hard on this idea that if I died in the Rahu Dasha in my previous incarnation, that I'm going to be born during the Rahu Mahadasha in this incarnation. It's not necessarily what we need to burn in our brains. Something interesting to think about. But the reason I'm saying this is because I want us to consider that that's not the case. Because, for example, if you are somebody whose soul, you know, what happens to you in your early childhood years is reflective of the soul. It's not necessarily arbitrary. So if you are somebody who, for example, is due to experience a painful lack of proper nurturing in your early years, when you're like 2, 3, 4 years old, for example, and you're being compromised in your ability to open your heart, maybe you're doomed to experience a moon Mahadasha at that age, and maybe you've got like a Scorpio moon. So you got Scorpio moon debilitated, let's say, in the Navamsha or the Shastyamsha or some other important chart. Maybe you were bound to experience the moon Mahadasha and to have that early childhood trouble. And maybe that has nothing to do with you having died in the moon Mahadasha in your previous incarnation. This is just the reason why, you know, as astrologers, especially as modern astrologers getting a grip on these ancient techniques, it's good for us to just get a sense of what we're talking about. I don't know the answer to what I just described, but I think the latter that I just mentioned is more closer to the truth, which is that every incarnation is just set up to unfold a mystical pathway that has obviously has something to do with the karma of your past lives, but you're not necessarily going to start the dasha just because you died in that dasha in the previous incarnation.